Hey guys, welcome back to Rossoneri TV. I'm Gio and I'm here for a new video regarding AC Milan's latest transfer news and rumors. As always, make sure to comment down below to give your input on today's news. Now, today we'll be speaking about different players. First of all, we'll be touching on Luiz Adriano, then Simeone from Genoa. I'll also be speaking about a possible contract renewal for De Sciglio and Donnarumma, and finally some new updates that just came in regarding Rossoneri. So as usual, once again, make sure to leave a like on this video to support the video and the channel, and as always, leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. So speaking about Luiz Adriano, today there were some reports coming in from Calcio Mercato saying, this is specifically coming from his agent. First of all, he's saying that Luiz Adriano still has a long contract with Milan. However, he did hint that Milan want to sell the player. So, first of all, this is already a big statement coming in from an agent. I mean, the fact that Milan wanted to sell him shouldn't be a surprise to many people. I mean, he hasn't been playing for a long time. He's one of the least used strikers that we have in this team, and a lot more people in this team actually have privilege over Luiz Adriano when it comes to making choices for Montella. Therefore, I think that Luiz Adriano has to be one of the players when looking at the list that Milan might have to sacrifice, or maybe not really sacrifice in this case, but they have to give away or sell rather in order to generate some funds for the winter transfer mercato, in which, once again, I repeat, will have zero funds whatsoever. So all the funds that Milan will have to use in order to purchase players if they want to in the winter will have to come from potential sales that they make at the club. Now, going further on with the agent's comments, he also said that there seems to be an interest once again from Russia, specifically Spartak Moscow. This might be a team that could be interested in Luiz Adriano. However, I did read some comments once again regarding Luiz Adriano, and I don't know if it was one of his past agents or something, but this guy called Dimitri Seluk, he's the current agent of Yaya Toure and a lot of other players of Eastern Europe, but he says that pretty much anyone that would sign Luiz Adriano would have to be a complete idiot in order to do so. He says that I don't believe such a stupid transfer can take place. He told this to the Russian site Championat.com. And he also said if this transfer does happen, it will prove that whoever made the decision was either a complete idiot or corrupt. He goes on by further mentioning that the player, he has known him for a long time, as he made his debut for Shakhtar Donetsk, and pretty much they're saying that Shakhtar Donetsk usually sell their players for like 40 million, 50 million, and for Luiz Adriano, they were satisfied with only 8 million. So he's pretty much saying that this should give you an idea as to why they sold him for that cheap. He's not good of a player, and that is why he's once again referring to the fact that whoever signs Luiz Adriano is pretty much making an idiot move. Well, I guess that applies to Milan as well, as we did sign him back in the past. And he has a pretty lengthy contract. I believe when we signed him, it was a 4 to 5 years contract. So he still has a lengthy contract, but Milan want to get rid of him, of course. If they can get a decent price for him, that would be pretty good. Now, I've also read reports that apparently Spartak Moscow might want to offer 7 million for Luiz Adriano. In my opinion, that is more than an acceptable price. I would definitely sell him if I had the possibility to make that decision. But I believe that, that'll be a pretty good sale if we do make it. Will it happen? I'm not entirely sure. But if it does occur, then I'll be more than happy because, I mean, pretty much, he's not the player that we were expecting to be in the first place. He's not getting much playing time. Even Lapadula is getting more playing time than him. Obviously, he's technically a better player than Luiz Adriano. But just to mention, he's not really up there in the chart, and he's not getting many minutes. I think I've also read something saying that he played like 120 minutes or something this season, which is really, really low for a player that we paid 8 or 9 million for. So we'll see what happens with all of this, but I think that Luiz Adriano is one of the main candidates to leave Milan this winter. Now, moving on, there are some reports regarding Giovanni Simeone, the player from Genoa. These reports are saying that Milan might actually be interested in signing him for next season. They are considering signing him, and of course, Milan do have a pretty good relationship with Genoa. However, I'm not entirely sure as to whether Genoa will want to sell him right away. I mean, they just acquired him last summer, and he does have a pretty good contract with them. I'm not entirely sure how long his contract is. Oh, I just read it, until 2021. So that is a 5-year contract. I'm not quite sure if Genoa will consider selling him. After having a pretty positive start to the season with 7 goals and 2 assists in 16 appearances in the Serie A and the Coppa Italia. These are pretty good statistics for the young player. And personally, I think he's a pretty interesting player, a pretty interesting forward. But once again, I don't believe that, we will consider selling him for any reason, buying him at this moment, at least in January. Might be a solution for the summer, but once again, I'm not entirely sure that Genoa want to give him right away, right after a year, and he's performing well, so I don't see a reason as to why Genoa will want to sell him in the first place. Now, moving on, I wanted to speak about Donnarumma and De Sciglio, because apparently the Chinese are considering once again to extend their contracts as well. Now, this comes after various reports of possible contract extensions for Bonaventura, Paletta, and like we heard yesterday, Suso. Now, added to this mix, they also want to extend Donnarumma and De Sciglio, which in my opinion seem like 2 very good players to extend their contracts. Of course, De Sciglio is not the best left back that we have, in my opinion. I always valued Antonelli to be better. But I think it's good that we preserve this player and we keep him at Milan, because, once again, I think that it is important to have a pretty good bench as well, rather than a good starting 11. De Sciglio has been getting a good share of starts this season, Antonelli not so much. He's been injured for a while, but I still value Antonelli better, like I said. But I think it's still important, to keep players like De Sciglio, even though maybe they won't start each match and they might alternate between themselves. I'm speaking about De Sciglio and Antonelli. I think it's good to see that we have the possibility of having 2 very good, or good at least, left backs to play in that position, so that one is injured, the other one is ready to step in and make the difference himself. So I think, once again, it is important that the Chinese and Milan come together in order to extend De Sciglio's contract. And of course, Donnarumma is one of the main topics that we've been speaking about for months now. When is his contract renewal gonna come? We simply don't know exactly when, even though his agent, Mino Raiola, like I said yesterday, wants to wait until the final closing comes in and he knows exactly the identity of the Chinese investors and so forth, their plans. So he wants to wait for the right time, and I honestly not really blaming him. Once again, like I said yesterday, I don't expect Donnarumma to leave or anything. So, in my opinion, the Chinese are very fond of De Sciglio and Donnarumma, and their contract renewals will possibly arrive sometime next year. So once again, Galliani said it. He said we're probably not going to make many signings in January. What we need to focus on is extending contracts. And I think we have a pretty good base of players. And all the players that have been considered to extend their contracts are all players that I personally would consider staying at Milan for the long term. I think all of those players have played a pretty good part to their season so far. So I don't see a reason as to why the Chinese and Milan shouldn't be extending all of their contracts. Now, finally, I wanted to give in some last minute updates on Rossoneri, because they did just come in. Apparently, it seems to be that Rossoneri is wanted by many teams. I've said this for a few days now, and apparently the teams that are currently after him are Juventus, Napoli, which are considering to loan him to Empoli, and also Atalanta. But apparently all these clubs will have to wait until summer. They don't want to get him right away. And it might be the right opportunity for Milan since they want him right away in January. It might happen that Milan will actually land him before any of the other teams. Now, the good news about all of this is that Milan actually intends to close the deal following the Supercoppa game on Friday in Doha. Now, I'm not quite sure if this is going to happen right away, right after the game. But what they're probably mentioning is that with the Chinese's approval, all of this deal for Orsolini could potentially happen by the end of 2016 or very early 2017. So very exciting to see that Orsolini could become a Milan player early on next year, and we will have him for the second half of the season, of course. He will be a good backup for Suso. Once again, like I mentioned with Antonelli and Di Sciglio, it is good to have a player of a good caliber in any position on the field. However, it's even better when you have a good player starting and a good backup to follow him if anything happens to him in games or so forth. Or if Montella simply wants to change something and wants to put on another threat. This is always good to see, and I think that is exactly what Milan are kind of building now. They're building a good potential bench. You know, that is what we always needed. Like I said endless times, we have a solid starting 11, but we need to have a stronger bench. Better players that could come off the bench, make the difference. That is exactly the types of players that Milan needs. So guys, please let me know your thoughts and comments on all of these news that came up today. These are the latest updates currently going on at Milan. As usual, also make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so that you guys don't miss anything that is going on at Milan. It is very important to stay updated, and we will obviously give you guys daily updates from now on until the end of the winter transfer mercato. So starting to read your comments, Ed Elfigo says, we do have a 50 million transfer budget, or at least we would if Fassone. We don't have this 50 million transfer budget. Many people are continuing to talk about this 50 million transfer budget. Those were just rumors from unreliable sources, like I mentioned yesterday. I'm not taking a look at these sources as they honestly mean nothing to me. If sources such as Sky or Gazzetta, reliable sources, mention such a thing, then I would believe it. But if it's coming from sources, like one guy told me that the thing about the 50 million was coming from United Arab Emirates or anything. No disrespect to them, but why would they know something that Italy doesn't in terms of this Chinese transfer budget or whatnot, you know? So personally, there is no 50 million transfer budget for the winter transfer mercato, at least for now. Right now, like Galliani has mentioned many times, the transfer budget is set at €0, and what we need to focus on is extending players' contract, maybe get some players for the January transfer window. But before we do that, we have to sell. We have to sell players that could get us a bit of revenue. Players like maybe Luiz Adriano or Honda. These are players that we need to focus on selling in January so that we could get some extension. Now, moving on. Sika says, well, we're going to buy him, right? I'm just asking how much he would cost. Pasalic, is that what you're talking about? I'm not quite sure about him buying. Once again, Milan do have the priority on his say once his loan deal at Milan ends. Of course, he's a Chelsea player. He's not owned by Milan, for those of you that still don't know. But obviously speaking, he's an interesting player that Milan will have to deal with Chelsea once the summer transfer window starts. So this is not something that they could do at the moment. They're going to have to wait until June or July to deal with Pasalic and Chelsea. As far as cost, I'm not quite sure how much it would cost. But, you know, he's been getting some starting times. Some official startups in Milan's lineup. in recent weeks, so this is definitely going to improve his value. At least that's what I'm thinking. However, I'm still not sure as to the price tag, how much it would cost. I simply don't know. I heard something about Bonaventura's contract. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but Bonaventura initially, they were supposed to finalize his contract extension. But what happened was that the Chinese actually want to give him more on wages, and there's something that's retroactive in terms of payments with Bonaventura, but it's something that shouldn't be a problem, that should be fixed soon. So once again, I think that Bonaventura's contract should be extended sometime in early 2017. Moving on, Aniket Desai says, is there any chance of getting some additional funds from the Chinese towards the end of January, whereas Rossoneri disappeared after flying around scouting players? There's obviously a chance, like we saw in the summer. I'm going to repeat it again for those people that haven't heard or haven't tuned in the recent days on Rossoneri TV. I mentioned it, that there is a possibility that the Chinese could give some additional funds to Milan, like we saw at some point in the summer transfer window of 2016. We saw them giving a bit of money to cover the cost of Lapadula, but don't expect anything like 40 to 50 million, at least in my eyes. I don't think that this will happen in January. I don't think the Chinese are willing to pay 40 to 50 million to fund Milan's Mercato. Definitely next summer when the closing hopefully happens, because we're still not 100% sure if it will occur. Next summer will be the summer where Milan will finally be splashing the cash, as we want to say, and sign the big money players. Hopefully that will be next summer, but don't expect anything big this winter. Is it possible to sign Simeone in January? I really don't think so. Once again, Milan is considering this move to happen maybe next summer. They're considering is a big word, because it doesn't really mean that they will sign him. They're just thinking of getting him, you know. Of course, if they pay a good sum to Genoa, I think they will give him up. But keep in mind, you know, Simeone is a player that just came in this year for Genoa. He has a lengthy contract until 2021. He has been one of their best players, scoring 7 goals in all appearances so far this season. So there's no way in hell that Genoa will give him up this winter mercato. Moving on, David Maloney says, Old Montella won't rest Locatelli anymore. Not sure what you said there. He's now irreplaceable, David says. Definitely there are teams that are interested in Locatelli. I'm not quite sure exactly who, but I'm pretty sure that there are teams that are interested in him. Yes, Locatelli will be starting against Juventus. That is why primarily he was rested against Atalanta last weekend. Aniket says Tonelli has been put up on sale for 10 million after losing Caldara. Is he an option for the defense? Which other defenders could be a target for Milan if we get some funds through sales or Chinese? Defenders, you know, very good defenders are usually with a high price tag. And really, I think the defense has been one of the best department, if not the best department of Milan's season thus far. Now, in terms of Tonelli, he's a very interesting player. As you said, he has been put up for 10 million. I haven't really read any reports on Tonelli, but he is an interesting player, you know. Once again, I think that if Milan could get him, it would be definitely a good solution. But personally, I don't think that, once again, Milan will be able to make such signings. And I think that even though Milan do generate some funds this winter, I don't think that the defense will be their primary focus. I think their primary focus could definitely be on midfielders. I think that is where Milan need to invest some money. But like you said, you know, Tonelli, he's 26, not the youngest, but he's definitely been, you know, one of those players that has shown in recent years, especially with Empoli. He's done a good job, and Napoli did buy him for 10 million last summer. Now, in terms of performances, he really hasn't done anything this season. He hasn't even played. with Napoli at all. He had a bit of a knee injury in the beginning of the season, but he's really been kept on the bench for a long time, and he hasn't been playing whatsoever for Napoli. So in my opinion, they still pay for 10 million for him. I don't think they'll be asking for anything less than that. Hopefully, maybe he could be a target for next summer. But once again, let's recall that Tonelli is a center back, and we already have Romagnoli there. Paletta has been outstanding this season so far. I think that Milan will definitely need a mix of experience and youth in that center back positions. So I don't know if Tonelli will definitely be a realistic, purchase or signing for us anytime soon. Gio, what are your thoughts on the airplane delay? If you missed it, make sure that I spoke all about it in yesterday's video. So if you want to know my thoughts on the airplane delay, make sure to watch yesterday's video. Have you seen the Chinese offer Tevez? Can we expect such offers from SES after takeover? I've seen the offer for Tevez, but in terms of such offers that you're mentioning about, are you mentioning about big players, big name players? Maybe we could, maybe we can't. Once again, I think everything will be more clear once the final closing will be done in terms of what money we could expect being put in transfer markets and so forth. Everything will be clear by March, guys. So like you guys probably know, I just know as much as you guys in terms of what's happening with the Chinese and so forth. I have no inside connection to them, so I'm not able to know anything else that you guys probably already read on the newspapers. Should we sell Bacca? That is a big question. I think that Bacca won't be sold, at least until the end of this season. He might be a player that the Chinese could sell next summer, but right now I don't think that he's sellable. And also Galliani and the Chinese have mentioned that they don't want to sell Bacca. Lagarto says, Gio, if Milan wins the Supercoppa, does Milan receive money or they qualify to something else? No, they don't qualify to anything else. This is just a separate cup. It's an official cup between the Serie A winners and the Coppa Italia winners. But since Juventus won the Coppa Italia against us, that position actually goes to the runner-up. So that was us. That is why we're facing Juventus, last year's Serie A winners. But in terms of qualification to other tournaments, no, we don't qualify to anything else. And both teams receive money just for participating in this game. I'm pretty sure there's something that goes along the lines that whoever wins this particular game will receive more money than the other team. But besides that, that is all there is for the Supercoppa. Maxi says, I think Milan should sell on the Adriano, Zapata, and Montolivo and use the money to buy Orsolini and Isco. Isco won't come here, at least in January. Did you hear that Milan costs 7 to 8 million euros per month? Yeah, definitely. I mean, being a professional team involves a lot of extra expenses and costs. Besides wages and contracts and transfers, guys, there's always additional costs. There's expenses, it's not like the league is paying for your hotel stays. It's not like the league is paying for the transportation. These are all club costs, guys. So obviously there's big club costs when you're talking about professional calcio. So I'm not surprised at all that Milan costs about 7 to 8 million euros per month. They probably also pay for certain people their housing, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but I'm not surprised at all that it costs that much to sustain a professional club on a monthly basis, So yes, I do confirm those news that you mentioned there, Cabo. Hi, Blake. Nice to see you join in. What are your thoughts on De Sciglio? I think that, like I said before, De Sciglio is a good player. Don't get me wrong. I just rate Antonelli better than him, and I think that Antonelli deserves a chance to start in games ahead of De Sciglio. Antonelli is more of a consistent player than De Sciglio. He has shown more in the little time that he has played. He's better at attacking. I think he's pretty good at defending as well. We saw that solo run from Antonelli where I think 2 or 3 Atalanta players were on him last game, and he still managed to hit the post with a thundering strike. Something that you wouldn't see simply from De Sciglio. Antonelli also a better vision, better mindset than De Sciglio. So I think that Antonelli personally has a lot of advantages over De Sciglio. De Sciglio is still a good player, don't get me wrong, but it's good to see that there's some sort of competition between the two players in that specific position. Stopzilla says we should try for Petagna this summer if we do get rid of Bacca. Nice suggestion. I think that Petagna, once again, he has shown his strength over the course of this season so far. Very strong player that is able to manhandle 3 to 4 players at a time, like we saw once again last weekend. Very strong player in general. He's capable of doing very good things for any team, in my opinion. But definitely, I think that Petagna would be a good addition if we manage to bring him back. Jamie says, have you seen the links towards Verratti? Now, I've seen links for a long time regarding Verratti. Not quite sure if that's going to happen anytime soon. Once again, might be more of a possibility next summer when we actually have transfer funds. But let's focus on the winter transfer mercato first, guys, because that is what is approaching us in just a few weeks' time. So let's see what happens for that. We'll see what we could get with potentially the sales that we can make from maybe Luiz Adriano or Honda this winter. FIA Creativity 91 says we mismanaged Luiz Adriano. I feel he was given little opportunity, especially after we spent 8 million. He won us 3 games off the bench last season, and I do remember that. I definitely do remember that. Like you said, Luiz Adriano was a big impact player last season. He was a big impact player. Like you said, he came off the bench, scored goals. I completely remember all of that. But at the same time, now we have a certain Gianluca Lapadula that has the advantage over Luiz Adriano, in my opinion. So, he hasn't been given much of a chance. I do agree. But at the same time, Lapadula, when he came on, or in general when he played, he scored 4 goals so far. So definitely that's good to see for him. And I think it's a different season. This season it might be Lapadula getting the edge over him. Next season it might be someone else getting the edge over Lapadula. I think every season is independent. So we have to see what happens in the future, Ed Alfigo, I'm going to sign off with maybe this question. Most of the Supercoppa money will go to the FA, isn't it? No, that's completely not true. Now, Ruchke, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right. I'm sorry for that. He says, if Antonelli is more consistent and effective than De Sciglio, why does Montella prefer De Sciglio at left back? Well, these are once again the choices of the coach. Once again, I am not the coach. I'm simply naming what I see, and I think many other people see this as well. First of all, Antonelli was injured for some time. De Sciglio has been very consistent from the Euro. So if you guys recall, he did very well at the Euro. And I thought that he was finally back as a player. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. He came back to Milan this season, and many times he did well, and other times he didn't do well. He was very inconsistent. On the other hand, Antonelli, he spent most of the season injured. I see here that he already missed 7 games out of 7 games out of what? 17 that we played so far, just on injury. And out of those 10 games that he could have potentially played, he played 4 games. So once again, he could have even got a chance to start in certain games. Antonelli has really been injured for a long time this season. Let's get that right, first of all. And personally, once again, Antonelli is a way more consistent player. Anyone that watches Milan on a daily basis or on a weekly basis when they watch their match will be able to tell you that, unless you're delusional. I'm just stating the facts here. A good team for Luiz Adriano is Crotone. I simply don't think that they're able to purchase him. What about Mikel, Cáceres? Both are free. What do you think? I don't think that we need players like Mikel. That's for sure. Cáceres would be a good alternative, but once again, Cáceres, I believe he plays more as a fullback, if I'm not mistaken. He could also play as a center back, but he's not a player that will be starting. I think that we are pretty set in defense this season. I don't think that we really need any additions in defense. I think that we should focus more on midfielders rather than anything else. But once again, Cáceres could be maybe a good addition to bring, how could I say, to bring some depth into the team in case that we need a player to replace someone when they have an injury. But he's not a player that I would want to see consistently starting every game. And I simply don't think that Milan will even consider making that consideration, since Cáceres, first of all, he's been left without a club for quite a bit of time now. And I simply don't think that Milan will be willing to pick up a player that's not even in form at the moment. Guys, honestly, come on, don't make stupid suggestions. Like a guy on loan for a month, come on. Alright guys, that's gonna sum it up for today's video, today's live stream. Once again, all the news regarding AC Milan's transfer window will be here posted on Rossoneri TV on a daily basis. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Also, please like the video, always helps out the channel. So if you haven't done that yet, please do so now. Once again, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm not quite sure if there will be a transfer daily tomorrow, since I will be doing the match preview for the Italian Supercoppa, which will be taking place on Friday. But of course, you guys, please join me for that match preview. And if you have any questions, transfer market related, you could obviously ask me there as well. There's no problem with that. But there's a chance that there won't be a transfer daily video specifically for the transfers. But once again, there will be a match preview video tomorrow for Milan-Juventus, which will be played on Friday in Doha for the Italian Super Cup. So guys, once again, thank you for watching. This has been Gio signing off. And as always, Forza Milan!